there are still queues at some fuel dispensaries, what they called, filling stations, even though there are still some queues, everybody is actually now getting fuel, but only in the Moscow area. And everyone else sees that. And there's been quite a lot of grumpy voices about it. Talking of grumpy voices, Vadnik Soup, let's try again.
Yeah, good morning, mockers. Yeah, hello from Kiev. I'm actually close to the protest. The connection was too bad to actually report from there, but I just came back from the protest. I'm at the Maidan Square close to Maidan Square, and yeah, it's quite interesting here what's happening. So I don't know if you wanna have a small insight on the atmosphere of the protest, etc.
Please, yeah. Sorry, I had a mouthful of coffee.
So I've been to Ukrainian protests before. Back in the day, I was on the Maidan, 2013, 2014. I've been to recent protests of like the law against good behavior, and so I can compare a little bit. And what strikes me here is a lot of young people, a lot of people like 40 and under, basically. So the older age groups haven't come out that much. So this is definitely something that really appealed to the younger generation, and they are basically they're protesting for their future again. That's how I interpreted asking a few people, and I was interviewing these two girls, and they were saying like, okay, people were making like their cardboard signs, people were still writing on them, etc., and they were telling me about its business over blood of Ukrainians. And that's still like the sentiment. Like Syrsky for them represents the old system, the old Soviet system, and Fedorov actually represents their future. So I saw a few other signs that said bring Fedorov back, things like that. So it's like Fedorov represents something, and Fedorov represents change in a good way that people here want. So I think this has to do with Fedorov's, way of governance and how he has started all these projects, and especially to the outside world that looked promising. But the story here is a little bit like Fedorov was probably going after a few people of influence too hard, or at least he was breaking up some corruption scams that are probably still going on. And that's like why eventually the pressure was put on too high on him from other, people of influence. And that's why eventually he had to go. So I'm just giving you here. Sorry?
Can I just mention though, that didn't force the PM to resign, did it? she wasn't resigning as a result of that.
No.
When she resigns, everybody has to be shuffled around. It's very possible that he might go straight back into his job if they don't accept this new person that's been put forward for it.
And that's sort of like the hope that people locally have here, that like things can be turned. So I think that's another reason why people just went into protest. So I was checking at night on Signal, and I saw like these messages on Twitter appear, like, okay, bring your cardboard tomorrow to this Franco Park, and let's protest. So people have the perception that their voice still matters. That's another thing that I have to say. But there is discontent as well. And so how are Ukrainians protesting? I must say a very friendly protest. So a lot of cheering, a lot of shouting, a lot of clapping. But what definitely struck me was the way in how coordinated it all was. So you heard coordinated clapping, coordinated shouts, etc. So it was no chaos. People really clicked with each other in putting out the message.
Yeah, and that's the thing that like I said before, the French riot and the Ukrainians go out in coordinated protest, and that, you know, that's just how they live their democratic process and make sure their voices are heard. So we know for a fact that this is not, you know, there's not loads of anger and stuff like that. This is just them saying, do ensure that you listen to the people. This is our opinion, and we would like our opinion to be taken into account. And that is such a good thing that they're able to do that, because in the past, you know, these things were not permitted because of, you know, the Soviet governments, basically.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because that has always been the difference between Ukrainians and Russians, basically, that Ukrainians go out to protest out of discontent, out of social things that they don't like. And Russians only go out to protest when their livelihood is at stake, you know, pensions, etc., or you know, there's a lack of food or whatever. So that's always been the difference. And one interesting comparison. So you had Yanukovych back in the day, who in like January 2014 had installed these anti-protest laws that were basically like, oh, you can't gather with more than 10 people in the street and stuff like that. You can't gather with 4 cars at the same place. You can't block entrances of politicians or you will go to jail. And all that kind of stuff. Basically like a Belarus version of like society, what you would get. And it was one of the reasons that the Ukrainians turned against Yanukovych even more on the Maidan, because that basically was like a one-way ticket to an authoritarian dictatorship. So that's always been the contradiction here in Ukraine. Like, yes, there's always been like this corruption and in part economical injustice, I would say, but there was always the freedom to express discontent. And there has been no leader the last 40 years that has been able to basically turn that around in Ukraine. So yeah, really interesting. I wanted to remark on one more thing since you were touching it. So you were touching the situation about Deripaska. I just wanted to say, like, what I found interesting was a recent article in the Wall Street Journal, I think it was, that was speaking about the fact that China had a long-term strategy of weakening Russia, and they had actually infiltrated the Russian power structures with their kind of like people. So I find this interesting because, you know, if you ever want to throw Putin down, the people that wanted to put him down, they need to have the impression that there's a bigger power that like will prevail. And it seems to me that a few people in the Russian, you know, in the Russian power structure are actually betting on China for the future. And I think that's very interesting. China, of course, will approach Russia as a colony in the future. That's the perception the article also had. But just to make one last comparison, so what we saw was like China gaining influence in Central Asia, and then suddenly countries like Kazakhstan were standing up towards Putin. China was having more influence in Belarus, and now Russia basically has a problem gaining more influence in Belarus because there's the Chinese influence right now that they can't overturn. So I definitely think that the Chinese influence in Russian power structures is something we should have to look into. And back to you.
Yeah, I think they've been slowly just, you know, building their basis, making sure that they have the ability to step in. I mean, literally, they have stepped in and said, leave Belarus alone. They're our friend. Don't you be trying to push them into a war that they don't want. And that in itself, you know, telling Putin basically, no, this far, but no further. And so they are already dictating terms to him, and he's having to swallow that shit. You know, he's having to eat that shit sandwich because he's got no choice. And that tells you how his situation is untenable going forward, because he's already showing weakness. And you cannot be weak and be the leader of Russia. Oh my gosh, no. You will get eaten alive if you make it that far. So, yeah, I do feel as though, you know, this is, it's starting to expose some weakness. Now, talking of, you know, showing weakness and what have you, our friend and potty-mouthed propagandist, Mr. Goldman, I've forgotten his first name, anyway, Goldman, has been very upset, because air defences keep failing and oil refineries keep burning, and they need foreign parts because their own machine tool industry is absolutely fecked and everything comes from China. You see, that reliance on China is basically everywhere now. And even he says that we completely rely on China at this point. Now, he is a little bit ever dramatic, but in this rant, he makes that point that if it wasn't for China, we wouldn't be able to do anything. You know, it only takes a little bit of flexing from China and Russia will indeed have to come to heel. They call for resilience. He calls for resilience. Only what? Even they are now admitting themselves that, well, they only have so much that they can do for themselves, and they have to rely on somebody else to do it for them. And that tells you everything about the, you know, strength of the Russian Empire, that it's not really very strong. And we just have to be unafraid for them to fall over. It looks to me as though, you see, we've got to turn our Western brains off. We cannot negotiate with this. We cannot expect them to suddenly have a change of heart and decide to come to the negotiating table. They will only do that when they feel that there is something in it for them. And they will turn up with massive demands and see how much they can get from us. And they've always done that. And every time it's broken down because they will not move on their maximalist positions. And we need to understand that this is not, you know, a negotiation in the same way that we think it is. We've got to get rid of our Western thinking when we talk to these people, because they just don't think like us. Now, they are beginning to realize that they don't want this war, but they also know that they cannot simply stop it. And why? Because of, for want of a better word, pride. That, you know, they have to be beaten by a much bigger, much more terrifying enemy. And unfortunately, we are not standing up to the task. And that is why they're virtually begging NATO to get involved. Please get involved so that we can at least go home and, you know, say that we were beaten by NATO. Goodness me, please. Now, in a way, that gives them a get out of jail free card. By refusing to stand up and be the, you know, be the bully that they keep saying we are, it's weakening them even further, because Ukraine is taking advantage of the fact that they can't, you know, they can't back down. They're absolutely not in that position. There's nowhere for them to go. They can only be beaten by a bigger enemy. And they don't see Ukraine as that yet. This self Go on.
No, I was just going to say, Marcus, I think what Russia really needs is to be humbled. They need to be beaten by Ukraine. They need to be forced to in some way they need to be forced to just accept that no, it wasn't NATO. It wasn't all of NATO that beat us. It was Ukraine that beat us. Because if that doesn't happen, if we give them an out, if we allow them to say, "Oh, look, we fought bravely. We took on the entirety of NATO," and if it was just Ukraine, then it would have been over in a couple of months. If we allow them to run with that sort of narrative, they'll be back. They'll be back, and they'll try to seize another country. They'll try to seize more land somewhere else in a few years. We can't allow that to happen. As I think we've said many times, and I think as Ukraine have said, this needs to be the last war. This needs to be the last war, and the way that we can maximise the chance that this is in fact the last war is to humble Ukraine. Humble Russia and have Russia humbled quite publicly in a global sense. So they go away, they lick their wounds, and maybe they stop seeing themselves as a superpower, because they're not, and they have an aging stockpile of nukes. Aside from that, they're no superpower, and I think we can't let them get away. Yeah, as I was saying, we can't let them get away with any sort of way to salvage their pride in all of this. They need to be humbled. Back to you.
Yeah, absolutely, because we can't allow them to continue their imperialist dream, and giving them what they need at this point to step down would be giving them a get out of jail free card. This self-declared great power cannot admit defeat, especially not against a country that they used to own. I mean, come on, they're smaller, they're weaker, they're inferior to us. Withdrawal would not be a military failure, it would be a massive humiliation and would indeed collapse Russia's entire self-image. You see, they're like the overconfident, child who finally falls over and breaks their knee and then realizes that they can't run around like that anymore, and they can't jump off everything that they see, and eventually they have to realize that they are breakable after all. And that is what we need to achieve.
Yeah, well, we see the arrogance, don't we? We still see the. Sorry, I was just going to say, we still see the cognitive dissonance. Like the arrogance. The woman, the video that was, I assume through WhatsApp, the woman in the UK, absolutely gobsmacked that no one in the UK spoke Russian. She couldn't believe it. So this is how they think, mockers. It's almost like an indoctrination that they truly believe that they are the world's power, and everyone should sort of bend to their will and speak their language. It's that needs to stop. Back to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you see, they operate around a mafia hierarchy built around this strongman type culture. If Putin retreats, he's weak and he will be cannibalized by the very structure that he created. So he's not in a position to retreat because he might as well just shoot himself in the head. And maybe we'll get to that, in the bunker. But this is a man who is already obsessed with his own longevity. He's directed his own family, his daughters, towards scientific research and poured enormous resources into trying to extend his own life. I wouldn't be surprised if he's injecting the blood of, children and things like that in order to try and make himself live longer. Did you hear about that guy who's got tons of money and he said he was going to live forever, and he's been using his own son as, some sort of lab rat for trying to harvest the tools of youth And he's now been diagnosed with a terminal disease, and I think that that's just karma right there. Well, Putin's sort of the same. He wants to live forever. I mean, look, right? I don't want to die. I don't like the idea of it. Absolutely makes me feel awful to think about it. But there will come a time for all of us. And I don't know what happens after that. And I'd like to think that we get other opportunities. But, you know, I'm not going to go there right now. I'm just going to say that none of us really want to consider our own demise, do we? It's not a nice thing to think about. And yet this guy ponders it regularly.
Yeah, and for Putin, it may end up being sooner than he thinks.
Well, exactly. So he is terrified of death. And I'm sure, you know, this is because he just doesn't have anything good in his life. A lot of people use faith to buffer that concern, or spirituality. This guy only believes in life and death, basically. He will not voluntarily choose an outcome that could threaten his personal survival because, that is his only instinct, really, at this point. They have paid an absolutely massive demographic and economic price already, and he's still determined to pay a higher price because he's worth it. More than 1 million Russians, including a disproportionate share of the educated, the technically skilled population, have left the country. Another estimated 1.4 million are dead, wounded, or permanently disabled. And we've seen some of these guys. Remember the guy with no arms where they were pinning a medal onto him and helping him drink some vodka? Yeah, I mean, it's fucking sad. It's really horrific.
It brings me back to the Shrek quote, mockers. Some of you may die, but that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make.
Absolutely. And that is the mindset that he has. The economy is under massive strain. We've seen, just how terrible things are getting. And I mean, just getting fuel is like a 3-day expedition at this point. But it's not just for the little people who want to drive their car to work. In some cases, they're queuing for days. But farmers are where it's really at. Farmers are warning that shortages of diesel and fertilizers are going to severely disrupt their agricultural production, and there is a real, honest risk of food shortages now. In fact, it's already started. We can see it's already started. They're also absolutely beside themselves with fear as to what's going to happen if the war ends and these guys that they sent to the front come home. There's already problems with soldiers who've come home. I mean, they've committed murders, they've started up local mafias, they're very angry and mentally affected. Sex workers in Russia. There has been a mass exodus from the industry of the women working in it. And believe me, it's a massive industry in Russia. Why? Because a lot of their clients are from the armed forces, and returning veterans have been especially violent, cruel, and sadistic, and have forced them out of the industry. The Kremlin is explicit that they don't want to repeat the aftermath of the Soviet war in Afghanistan, when 500,000 soldiers returned from a failed war to a collapsing country, traumatized and brutalized and absolutely unable to reintegrate. And organized crime, addiction, and social violence just exploded within the country. Well, it's a bit too late for that. I'm sorry, it's a bit too late for that. But you can see why they don't want to stop the war. What they can do is they can continue this war of attrition and keep slowly losing to Ukraine at an enormous cost, but also at a cost to Ukraine as well. Or they can intensify their cognitive and political warfare, deepen the divisions in Europe, try and drive wedges between the EU and each other and the United States, and try and bring more Russian-friendly governments into power. Remember what I said about that funding of the far right through America? Because remember, the orange person works for Putin, always did. You can see how that, you know, he's literally doing Putin's bidding there. You know, try and pressure Ukraine into unfavourable settlement, which will benefit them with something, anything, to say that they've had a win. They've begged Trump, literally begged him at this point, to try and force Ukraine into something that they don't want. Perhaps a Korean-style stalemate where they build a big old wall and we're behind this side and you're behind that side. But Ukraine have said no, because we don't abandon not just our land, but we don't abandon the people there. And you're still torturing people. You're still stealing children. And that can't continue. You can't just convert people to a new nationality by force. And so that in itself is just a terrible, terrible option. But also, you know what that does? It just gives them time to rebuild their forces, rearm and resume later. As an absolute last resort, escalate by attacking the NATO alliance directly and triggering a conventional war with NATO that they will quickly lose. But then they can say, okay, we lost, but we did fight the entire West because we're so fucking big in our boots, and look at our flipping size of our, you know, audacity, that we fought the entire West, and okay, we lost, but we lost honourably to all this masses of the Western countries. That is what they're trying to achieve with all this fucking around, you know, threatening Poland, threatening Latvia. That's what they're trying to achieve. They're trying to achieve at least a couple of NATO countries going, no, you fucking don't, and retaliating. And then they can be the victim, you see. Oh, we're the victim. We've been attacked. You know? They cannot win this war, and they know it. They know that now. A lot of them. I mean, you hear it coming out their own mouths that they just cannot win this war. But they can't stop it either and survive. Or at least Putin won't survive. I mean, look, right, he's in his late 70s. He's not going to survive anyway, but he still thinks that he might because he lives in a fantasy land. I mean, you know, he drank his own Kool-Aid some time ago and forgot to be intelligent enough to understand what's actually going on in the world. And so, you know, he's living in this fantasy where they can still win. And everyone around him is like, no, but who's going to tell him? Nobody's got the balls to tell him. Also, nukes, not an option. Doesn't form part of this. Absolutely not. China's already said, don't you fucking dare. But also, I mean, you know, we've had this conversation before. Do they work? Do they? Nobody knows until you try and use them. And do you want to take that risk? There's an awful lot of people who won't be wanting to take that risk, I can assure you. Especially the guy who, you know, has to actually do the launch, because it won't be Putin pulling that lever, will it?
No. Look, they're already in a position, we touched on this before, right? They're already in a position where they can only continue to fight at the moment, really, at China's pleasure, right? If China were to say, hey, Russia, that's it, well, we're pulling the pin now, we're going to stop supporting you, that's pretty much going to be the end for Russia's war effort. I would have thought they're reliant on China for fuels now, if they're not already, they'll soon be reliant on China probably for grains and agricultural products as well. So as you say, there's no, without outside help, they're already in a position, I think, where they can't continue. It's hard to see how they, you talk about sort of trying to involve or escalate to engage in NATO. It's hard to see how they, unless they've got a couple of thousand sort of tanks and artillery pieces sort of hidden away somewhere, and they might. Although I doubt it, because I think we'd be seeing them. We'll be seeing more of them now, instead of the older stuff that we've been seeing for for months and months and months now, and especially in terms of tanks and armoured vehicles. It's hard to see how they've got enough power left to project onto a NATO country such as Finland, or it's difficult to see that happening, Marcus.
Well, some of the stuff that they are producing now, they aren't sending to the battlefield because they know they'll lose it immediately, and they are popping it into storage. That has been noted by Jumpy, who, has been watching their storage of military materials for some time. So they are sort of, hedging, keeping a little bit back just in case. We shall see. I think at some point they will make the mistake of making a small foray into what they think is a soft target, probably one of the Baltic countries. And then we shall see. We shall see if we've got the balls to stand up for ourselves. And, God, I hope so. I really do. And then, once they're smacked down, once they feel as though they've been punched severely enough that they can say, oh, we need to go home, then the worst of their problems will start. I mean, they think it's bad now. Goodness gracious me. They got some problems. And it's going to get worse. In the words of Prune, it will get worse. And on that note, that happy note, I need to go
Just
and do some work.
A couple of quick things, if I can throw in, just for a couple of minutes, Mockers.
As it's you, of course.
Thank you. I just wanted a couple of things that I picked up on that I thought, look, they may have already been mentioned. Emmanuel Macron, we had obviously the announcement with Lockheed Martin on board as well. So the wheels are turning in terms of getting the licenses, the ITAR licenses issued for the PAC-3 missiles, which is awesome. At the same time, you've all probably seen the announcement from Emmanuel Macron that they're going to allow Ukraine to start producing the French Scalp or Storm Shadow, same thing, cruise missiles. So we expect that to happen, I think, starting next year or maybe even late this year for those. So that's good.
After and a number of other missiles, but especially the air defence missiles.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. One for the UK. I saw that there was an update on the Dragonfire weapon, which the UK plan on fitting to your Type 45 destroyers. But they're also, my understanding is they're also...
Pew.
Sorry, Marcus, go on.
Pew pew lasers.
Yeah, pew pew lasers, exactly. So you have 6 Type 45 destroyers. 4 of those are going to get the Dragonfire, the directed energy laser weapon, and some of those will be also going to Ukraine. I couldn't find a time frame for that, but that's good news. And the dwell time on those things, they're being improved all the time. The time on target or dwell time in laser weapon speak, they have down to 4 seconds now, which is really impressive. So that's happening. And just a little update on the IOC funding drama. So sports ministers from 9 EU countries now have urged the EU sports commissioners to suspend funding for the IOC as a result of the IOC lifting the suspension on Russian athletes. And they've also called for funding to be withdrawn from the World Aquatic Organisation and the International Gymnastics Organisation. So stay tuned to that, because I know a lot of us were quite rightly upset about the fact that Russia may be allowed to compete again under their own flag, but that may not be a done deal. The IOC may be pressured there to have a change of heart, and we'll go to Will.
Hi, I just thought I'd be a Peter and come up right at the last minute and talk your ear off. No, been off work all day. Anything happening? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding again. I just wanted to add to what you've talked about, Brent, that might have gone under the radar in the whole political issue, but the Ukrainian government has placed an order, meaning these will be manufactured and provided, placed an order for a significant number of FP7 ground-to-ground missiles. Thank you very much. So my birthday present's coming true. Don't save them all for air defense. I think they've got a better role in any case. So there's a big order coming through. We don't know how soon, but those will obviously be, some of them will be available in the late summer, early autumn, Brent. I think that's great. And g'day, Vatnik Soup. Hello, Soup. Stay safe out there, buddy.
Yeah, I think he's safe out there. He's surrounded by good Ukrainian people by the looks of things, judging by some of the photos
and
that he sent.
He's a pleasant bloke. Nobody's going to hold him in front of themselves like me.
So I have to go, Brent. So I got to go. To be fair, I have been working for the last hour because I'm cheeky like that. But I also want to finish early. So, these are the things that we do.
Fair enough. And thanks for that, Will. That's all the little bits and pieces that I had. So I reckon we can shut it down now, Mockers. Just a final reminder, guys, about the fundraisers. You'd be all be familiar with them. They're all up on the nest today, as they are in every Volya Radio session. So Ukraine today, as in any other day, just as much as ever, need our help wherever we can. So if there's a charity or a fundraiser up there that you think, I'd like to help that one along, please do. If you're able to set up a recurring donation, even better. But anything you can do to help would be appreciated. And if you don't have any money on you this month, jump online and bonk some Vatniks, because that's always good fun as well. And it all helps. It all helps Ukraine. So thank you, everyone, again. Thank you, Mockers, for having me for the last 2 hours. And I will say Slava Ukraini.
Hello, Slava.
Slava Nazi.
Love you the minute.
And Prince, if you are around,
I am here.
You can tell us about the show coming up.
Yeah, I will. What I will say is, the next thing coming up is Absurdistan. This week in Absurdistan is at. I know, right? This week in Absurdistan is at 6 a.m. Kyiv, 11 p.m. Eastern. Yeah. So
this week in Absurdistan with the return of Smokey.
The return of Smokey, yeah. We had to cancel Genocide this week because we have people traveling. So that's not
son of a.
And
we're gonna run into this challenge a little bit over the next month or till September for sure. So that's okay though.
Will's had the day off and he's been able to give his tonsils a rest. So I'm sure he'll have a lot to say in that session.
It'll be hard to get a word in edgewise, but Smokey manages to do it very well. But anyway, what I will say is enjoy your day, everybody. Enjoy your night. And with that, we will see you tomorrow. Well, later today or tomorrow, depending on where you are. Skoro Popotamus.
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 Україні слава!